Before I introduce my guest tonight, I have one announcement that didn't get onto the community calendar. This Saturday, Fresh New London is going to have an open house. It's December 14th, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. You can go and see their new space at 90 Garfield Avenue. It's the really large building where Yo used to be. And I heard they're at the right side of the building, near the big sign. You can park near their truck, and they will have presentations and lunch and a tour of their new place. So that's this Saturday, and it sounds great. There's their logo that you'll see on the sign. My guests tonight are, well, I'll introduce Bill first. Bill Warnow has been on the show. He's kind of an annual feature at this time of year as we start talking about ways to give in ways that might be more meaningful than just shopping and accumulating more stuff in the spirit of the holiday. And so Bill is on, and we're going to talk about HEIFER, but we're going to talk about some other things as well. And Bill brought with him another guest, and you can do the honors.
Yeah, I'd like to introduce my good friend, Ross Krasner. He's a neighbor. And Ross has been on this show about 4 years ago. 4 years ago. Right after he made his bar mitzvah. And at that time, he had decided to contribute all the money that gathered at a bar mitzvah to the work of HEIFER International, and that's how I was really impressed with that. He goes to East Lyme High School. He's a member of the Key Club and the National Honor Society, and both of those organizations do work that he's going to talk about. And he's also editor of the school newspaper. And I'll let him tell you a little bit about some concepts around the holidays that make a big difference.
Yeah, well, thank you for that warm introduction. It's hard to believe it was 4 years ago already.
I know. Well, 4 years in about 10 days or something.
Yeah, time seems to fly. So I only celebrate Hanukkah during the holiday season, which is already passed. This year it was early. It was actually on Thanksgiving, which is why they called it Thanksgivica, or HEIFER actually called it Thanksgivicow. I saw that somewhere. But on Hanukkah, it's a time to exchange gifts just like Christmas, and it's also, which is what we're trying to push, is a good time for alternative gifting, which is practicing tzedakah and tikkun olam.
Okay, talk about tzedakah, and, well, do you want to start with tzedakah or tikkun olam?
Well, in this case, they're similar. Tzedakah loosely translates to charity, and tikkun olam means repairing the world. So one way that you can give during Hanukkah is, on each night, the way I celebrate it at least, is every night you light a candle and you give a gift. And instead of maybe a toy for one night, you might give an alternative gift like a cow from HEIFER International. And that's what tzedakah is. And one sage actually leveled tzedakah into 8 different levels, one being the worst form of tzedakah and 8 being the best. And the worst form of tzedakah is to give begrudgingly, and then it goes to give less than you should. But the very top level, the highest level of tzedakah you can possibly do, is to make someone become self-reliant on themselves, which is exactly what I believe HEIFER does. Because what HEIFER does is you donate money to HEIFER, and they'll teach someone how to use livestock, or to give livestock to someone, teach them how to use it, and become self-reliant. And they'll be able to, for example, sell milk from a cow, and that milk could, that money from that milk can send a kid to school, can give that family health care, and make them self-reliant on themselves. So that's the highest level of tzedakah. And that's just an example of alternative gifting you can do on Hanukkah.
Now, you mentioned tikkun olam, and maybe you can talk a little bit about the concept of like why the world needs repair.
Well, there's certainly always something you can get involved with. As Dr. Warnow said, I'm involved with the National Honor Society, and something we did recently was we volunteered at a vet house, which is a home for veterans that have come back from war. And that house needed, we painted the walls, we worked in the garden. There's always something you can do. You just got to find a good organization. I know there's many we're going to talk about today. That certainly some I've been involved with. I'm also involved with the Key Club, as he said, which is a volunteer organization. And we branch out to different groups, one which was the Chikambuso, which it literally translates to remembrance, but it's a grassroots project in Zambia, which provides an alternative lifestyle to the most vulnerable women and children in the township, which basically means that the money we raised goes to school in Africa for orphans and widows. And that's just one example of how a high schooler can get involved. What we did was we had a karaoke night. And we had kids come and sing karaoke, and they paid to get in. And the money went right to this Chikambuso, which is a great organization.
Well, I'm part of the local Peace and Justice Network, and we were trying to think of films that would be good for the community. And one of the topics we were asked to find films about was youth empowerment. So I guess I know you're active with HEIFER and the different kinds of giving for Hanukkah and Key Club. Do you find that your peers are similarly interested or inspirable to do this kind of thing?
Absolutely. Maybe even more so than I am sometimes. My friend, Matt Lynn, he actually just went down to Peru, and he volunteered at an orphanage for disabled children. And I wrote a story in the paper about it, actually, but he said it was one of the most moving experiences of his life. He saw in a documentary that his kid and his brother just traveled the world, did amazing things, and he said, you know what, why not me? And he and his brother went down to Peru and worked at this orphanage, and he met people who he said were the most amazing people in his life, these disabled children who they had nothing, and yet they managed to put a smile on their face and play sports with each other. So that's just one example of one friend who just took it upon himself to try and change the world.
Wow. So what are your plans for this coming year? Are you a high school senior now?
I'm a senior. I'm applying to college right now. That's going, we'll see. But I'm in the National Honor Society and the Key Club, as I said, and what that means is that for the Key Club I have to volunteer 30 hours, and for the National Honor Society it's 20 additional hours. So that's 50 hours of community service that I can fill as I see fit, or any organization I want. So HEIFER is one I've worked with, the Chikambuso, I've worked at the Vet's House. I worked for Lease of America. I could talk about that real quick.
Yeah, why don't you?
I started at Flanders Elementary School. The National Honor Society sent some kids, including me, and we helped fill banners. We drew banners with those children that said, "Welcome Veterans." And then 2 days ago, the ceremony took place, Lease of America, and a convoy of veterans came into the elementary school and gave a presentation. And their mission statement is to remember, honor, and teach about veterans. And by the end of this year, they're hoping to get 500,000 wreaths on veterans' graves in 2013. So they're going to take this convoy, bring it down to Arlington. And what really stood out to me about that was teaching the children about veterans, because some of them had little to no idea what a veteran even was. So to teach them, starting from the beginning, you just say thank you. It's things like that. And the kids, they really didn't know what they were doing, to be honest, but now they're going to learn that thanking a veteran can go really a long way, because we saw when you can think of veterans, it's a great opportunity, and to give children that was a great thing.
Now, what age were the children? You said elementary school?
Elementary school, so that's kindergarten to about 4th grade.
Was there any particular age that really got into that kind of thing more than any other, or did they all?
I worked mostly with 2nd graders, but I didn't notice a difference. Some of the younger kids were they didn't know as much, they weren't as aware. But as the kids got older, they certainly you could see a difference.
Yeah, that could really bode well for the future too, because as I think will come up in a conversation later, a lot of the veterans in this country have real problems in terms of just getting their everyday needs met, not to mention being able to go a step beyond the everyday needs. So, maybe, you're helping train a generation that takes care of people in need better than happens now.
Yeah. There was my daughter-in-law lives up in Massachusetts, and she has been photographing disabled veterans, and she puts together a big photo montage and makes speeches and has some of the veterans come and actually speak to people and then raise money for the Semper Fi Fund or the America's Fund, which supports veterans. And one of the veterans I met there, we talk about alternative gifting, he found out that this other veteran who was missing a leg and an arm had to climb the third floor of a building to go to the bathroom. And it was very, very difficult for him. And so this other veteran built him a bathroom on the first floor. You know?
Wow.
And it was very obvious that the veterans feel like they need each other to help each other, and they really understand each other and what they've been through. So it's pretty impressive to see that, very touching, to see how they help each other. Yeah.
Now, since you kind of started this around your bar mitzvah, is there anything else you want to say about, I don't know, how Judaism fosters gift giving in any other way that makes sense to you, that is meaningful?
Well, certainly, yeah. It's definitely ingrained in our values to give as much as you receive, if not more. They say if all you have is a slice of bread or a loaf of bread, you should give half of it to someone who doesn't have a loaf of bread. And that's something that I know the Reform movement is trying to do. They're trying to make the bar mitzvah less of a graduation and more of a beginning of community service, lifelong community service.
That actually makes sense, because it is, you know, you are crossing a threshold into adulthood, so it shouldn't really be the end.
Not always. Now, Ann and I went up, that's my wife, we went up to Chester, and there's a synagogue up there, and they were doing a fundraiser for the Safe Futures, used to be the Women's Center in southeastern Connecticut, because one of the people there had actually seen the school program taking place in Norwich, and so they're dedicating all the money to the Violence is Preventable school-based program. But it was actually 8 women, adult women, who were doing their bat mitzvahs. And for their mitzvah, this is what they decided to do. And so there's no age restriction.
Well, that's true. If you don't get it done, if you don't do it when you're younger, you can do it older. Actually, my brother-in-law went through his bar mitzvah when he was in his 30s, because he had grown up in a very secular household, and then when his grandmother passed away and a few things happened in his life, he decided it would be meaningful for him to go back and do that. So you're right.
It's amazing.
It isn't necessarily just for 13-year-olds, but it happened the last time you were here. You were 13, and it was just within weeks, perhaps, of your bar mitzvah.
The fact that this it was actually a concert that they put on to raise the money. One of the men came over to me, and you know, there was a little speech about Safe Futures work, and then he came over, and it was during Hanukkah, and he said, you know, each day I give a gift to a charity, 8 days, and Safe Futures is definitely on the agenda now. So it's good to see that.
Well, that's good, because, you know, I never thought of Hanukkah as being a huge gift-giving holiday. It's gotten, you know, as Christmas has become big and commercialized and, you know, about getting more stuff, Hanukkah has kind of gone a similar route. And personally, I'm really happy to see maybe a trend starting to make it less about getting stuff.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of, especially this time of year, there's a lot of enthusiasm. You want to give, you know, that feeling of giving. It's what we're trying to do is just tap into that giving. Instead of giving toys to one another, maybe really make a difference and give a cow or give a you know, a goat.
Chickens.
Yeah, anything.
A camel. Whatever.
Okay.
Speaking of Christmas.
Let's talk about...
One of the things that Ross told me, which was kind of cool, since all the Christians are tied up on Christmas Eve, he goes down to the community meal center to serve food, just to show you the kind of young man he is. Very proud of us.
That is great.
Thank you.
Now, Bill, do you want to talk a little bit about the Christian perspective on giving at this time of year?
Sure. It all got started about the idea of the 3 kings. So these, supposedly these 3 kings come and give gifts to Jesus, right? He didn't give them any gifts. Right? It is his birthday, right? Okay. So, and then when Jesus was preaching, he said, that when you do it to the least of one of these, you do it to me. So, if you want, it's his birthday. If you want to give a gift, you give it to someone that's in need. And he also said, if you have a dinner party, you shouldn't invite all your friends because they'll pay you back. You invite people that are in need, and then they can't pay you back, and God will pay you back. So again, I think the idea, has been so distorted because the original idea is you're giving a gift to Jesus, and you're not getting anything. Right? So,
but the big stores would have you, believe otherwise.
Yeah, I'd be in trouble. But gifting is not just about giving money or gifts, presents. It's about also your time and your talents. So that's something that we've been talking about here. That, Ross, he's in high school. He doesn't have a lot of money, but he has time and he has talent. And he's been giving that.
He probably doesn't have a lot of time either, actually.
No,
but
50 hours of volunteer work. That's, it's up, So anyway, one of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit today was the idea that around the holiday, everybody kind of doubles down and wants to do something, to help somebody, buy him a tree or some presents under the tree or whatever. But that's really a want.
Yeah.
If you look around, there are 46 million people that are food insecure in the United States. 16 million of them are children. Okay? So when you think about needs, food, clothing, shelter, there are a lot of homeless people, heat in this area, a job, transportation to your job, gasoline for your car, school supplies, medicine, healthcare, and very importantly, savings. When something hits you, the difference between being homeless and still in your house could be that you had savings or didn't have them. So I was thinking that really we should talk a little bit about making a year-long commitment to support the basic needs of people, and maybe an additional holiday gift for their wants. So for as little as $10 a month, you can have it automatically taken from your credit card or your bank account to support some organization that does something useful around here. So $10 a month adds up. It's $120 a year.
And even though that isn't a huge sum, those monthly donations actually help stabilize planning for
That's
those
exactly right.
organizations beyond the dollar value because they know they can count on this.
Right. So for example, at HEIFER, they have a way you can give every month. And otherwise, at this time of year, they get a ton of donations, and then they have to process them all, and maybe it actually costs them more because they have to have more people on staff. And then if you want to just give things that people want, the congregations, the fire departments, the police departments, civic organizations, Safe Futures for one, they all are taking gifts right now. So what I was thinking about, well, in terms of local needs, for the want part, the New London Day has been highlighting people every single day on the front page.
Right.
And your congregation knows people, or or the food bank knows people. But in terms of actual needs, the Connecticut Food Bank is a great place to support. They need food. Their demand for food keeps increasing dramatically every year. Similarly, the Shoreline Soup Kitchens and Pantries. I know at Safe Futures, because I volunteer there, they have over 150 families, and the pickings are pretty sparse right now. So they're definitely stuff that they could use, and you can go on this website to look for it. Salvation Army is always looking for things at this time of year, too.
Now, other than food, what kind of things are places like Safe Futures or Salvation Army looking for?
Well, for example, at Safe Futures, if someone's in a domestic violence situation, first of all, 60% of the homeless families in New London County attribute their homelessness to domestic violence. So they may be homeless, or they may be coming directly out of a home. When they come, they have a little bag with maybe a change of clothes, medicine, and things like that, and that's it. because they're escaping a very violent situation. So they need everything. And when they set them up in the transitional living situation, they furnish it. And when those people leave, they take that with them so that they're able to set up in the new
Oh, so they
apartment
do get,
to keep it.
furniture so that they're not moving into an empty place.
Exactly. So they teach them to, budget, so they have a security deposit and all this when they get out. And there's a maximum of 2 years there. So there's always need. There's toiletries and things like that for people coming through all the time. And it's like 6,000 people a year benefiting from Safe Futures work. And so that's a lot of stuff that you need. And
And that's year-round, that isn't just now.
year-round, that's right. And so that's something you can do. So people need everything. I mean, you can just go to their websites and you can see, there's all different organizations that help people in our area.
Now, other than Safe Futures that I know you have been actively involved with, what other organizations, you mentioned Salvation Army, are there in the New London area that seem like they're really on the front line of giving people their needs?
Well, I mean, I can think of Visiting Nurses Association is always in need of money. The Martin House, which helps people that are, recovering from drug addiction and other things, putting people up. The Child and Family Agency of Southeastern Connecticut.
And they have a multitude of services, mental
Yes,
health,
and they're really
childcare.
a very big organization, and they have groups in different towns that support them, so you can actually join one of those and get involved in fundraisers. Habitat for Humanity of Eastern Connecticut needs, if you just don't have money but you've got time or talent, you can get out there and help a little bit, or you can donate. Easter Seals, it's up in the Norwich area. They have, really helping people with disabilities. So those are kind of local places.
Now, if people are looking more like at a national or a global level.
Then at the global level, of course, I volunteer with HEIFER, so that to me is a great organization, and they do tremendous work, and their model works. Then the Doctors Without Borders is very active right now, as you know, with all the refugees and everything. And they're definitely, almost all the money you donate to them goes directly to the needs of people.
And they go places that a lot of people
They go
don't
places
go.
you would never go. And sometimes they get killed. I mean, or captured. And they got to give them a lot of credit. CARE, UNICEF, which helps children a lot. And Child Fund International, you can adopt a child through them. One thing that we've done recently, the Crosby Fund for Haitian Education, which is run by the Crosby family, who live in Old Lyme. You can sponsor children to get an education in Haiti, and I know we have a lot of Haitians that live in our area. Yes, a lot in the Norwich area. They have their own fundraising thing also, but education is the key for getting out of poverty. And they have all these children. They have a bunch of children that made it through high school and are qualified to go to college, but they don't have the funds to sponsor them. And although college here costs $50,000 a year, there it might cost $1,500 a year. So it's something that's doable if you can afford it, to help, partially sponsor or totally sponsor a child to go to college over there and become a nurse or an engineer or something that would really help Haiti.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I was going to say, I will anticipate that someone might be thinking of calling with this question. What would be a person's motivation for donating to Haiti or a national organization rather than just to their local, the needy in their backyard?
Well, one thing is, for one thing, your money goes a lot further. I have sort of an international attitude that a person in another country is a valuable person, just like a person here is. And if my dollar can help 3 people versus 1 person, then maybe I prefer to do that. Whereas here in this country, if you don't have food, at least in our local area, you can go to the food bank. It may not be the case if you live in Appalachia, for example, but at least here you can. In those countries, if you don't have the food, you die. So to me, you know, I mean, I love children. I hate to see children starve to death. I've heard stories and people. One man I know that HEIFER helped. He lost one child after the other, 1, 2, 3, and then HEIFER came into his village, and they had a 4th child, and that 4th child lived because they had that support. So, to me, it's dire for people in some of these countries. Not quite the same as it is here. We get kind of, you know, we hear people commit suicide because they lost their job, and, you know, it's not necessary. That's sort of a permanent solution to a temporary problem, you know. But over there, you know, your water buffalo dies, your kids might starve, you know, so it's different.
Now, we also talked a little before the show about not just food, but water. Yeah. Are there any initiatives you know of that help with, you know, people in places around the world get clean drinking water?
Yes, there are quite a few, actually. And you can look them up on the internet. But I know, I'm most familiar with HEIFER, and I know that when they go into a village and they don't tell the people what they need. They listen to what the people need. They form community groups. The people decide what they need, make a request. HEIFER examines it, sees if it's sustainable, and all the other things, and then they'll support it. And if they need water, that'll be part of the whole thing. So it's a lot of people think of HEIFER as I gave a goat, but actually it's a complete picture. They have this model of that Pierre Ferrari, the head of HEIFER, brought with him, which is it's as simple as ABC. So at A, you're kind of like just got your head above water and you're just surviving. At B, you know, you're doing okay, and at C, you're prospering. And to get to C, if you're a farmer, you need a supply chain. You need a way to get your stuff to market, and you need a way to get stuff that you need. And so HEIFER has embraced that in 4 different areas of the world. Right here in Appalachia, where the farmers now have access to local markets and restaurants because now they know it's locally grown organic food, and this is great, you know. And then they've got that in the East Africa project that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is paying for under HEIFER, and that's raised 1 million people out of poverty, which is terrific. They're doing that in Armenia, where people way out in the boonies there, you know, they've got the cow, but you know they can't get any of the products to market. So now they're actually building infrastructure to get the stuff there and forming cooperatives so they can negotiate a better price for their products, which helps them prosper. And you know, it's just a wonderful approach that, you know, whatever you need, you're either going to get it or you'll be able to get it once your cow's making milk, and you know, it's great. Yeah.
Now, you were in Armenia fairly recently, right? And we do have some slides, but I'm not sure exactly quite how we're going to manage to show them. But maybe, I guess I'll ask our technical people. Are we going to be able to see the slideshow?
You want to do that now?
Yeah, I think so, and we'll go through it slowly, and Bill can kind of elaborate on his experience as we see the photos. I think that would work out.
Very touching, some of the things I've experienced there. So,
other than Armenia, where have you been through HEIFER? I remember
Honduras, yeah, and a couple of projects I've been to in Massachusetts, and one down in Arkansas, and you know, there were the different things, like the ones up in Massachusetts were more around the immigrants coming into this country and growing their own food, so that worked out well. All right, so here we are.
Okay.
We have some slides. So everybody recognizes that is a cow, right?
Right.
So how are we going to move these along? This is a family that owns that cow in Armenia, and go on from there. Okay. And you'll notice there's a cow and then there's a calf. And what happened is in Armenia, in terms of youth, they have these youth clubs that HEIFER has started, and they train the young people on how to be farmers, and some of them they train how to be lawyers, and some of them they train to be reporters, and some biologists. They have these after-school programs that these kids attend because they're out in the country and they don't have access to the stuff that they do in the city, right? So they have about 2,200 young people in various schools engaged in this type of work.
Okay, now what is this?
This is interesting. You know, our county's stuff to live on, and in very long winter, they are in the mountains of Armenia, so they store the hay that they grow on top of the building.
Oh, what time of year were you there?
I was there in October, and when you woke up in the morning, there was ice on everything. So.
Oh my goodness, I hate to think what it's like there now.
All right. Now, if you have a cow, these are some of the products you can make. They showed us. You can make milk, of course, and you can make cottage cheese, and you can make string cheese, and you can make yogurt, and then they also make lavash, which is the bread over on the left side there. Okay.
Now, is that for their own consumption, or do they
Yes.
sell some as well?
They can sell some too. You know, the milk will last a certain amount of time, so you want to turn it to cheese if you can. If you go back, can you go back?
Go.
Yeah. This is the young girl in that family. You can see the mother smiling very proudly. That young girl's going to school because HEIFER's project in there, and that's a school kit that we're giving them. Okay. Let me,
Now, you said they don't have universal public education there?
well, they do, but you know,
Like, getting there is...
it's important that these kids have supplies to work with. So.
Right,
So it's a small kit with things, but it's just
yeah,
to
but
show
they
the
still
kids
need some,
encouragement. You know?
yeah,
Yeah.
and what
Yeah.
you need.
And they also grow apples and grapes and stuff on their property. Now, this is interesting. You wouldn't think so looking at it, but see that window? And below it, you'll notice a different color of the cement. And the reason is when this man received a cow, and HEIFER requires it to be a home for the cow, he took that window out and made a door and put the cow in his bedroom.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
That's how much he wanted that cow. Now you go to the next slide, you'll see he received the Golden Talent Award from HEIFER because he got his cow, he raised a calf, passed on the offspring, wound up buying more cows with money he'd made. And if you go on to the next one, he's very proud about that. And the next slide, you'll see that there's a couple of the cows he now has, and he now has a barn. He built that entire barn, which is huge, by the way,
Wow.
from money from his cow. And he's got 6 cows and a bunch of pigs and some chickens, and he's teaching other people in this area about how to do all this. And if you see on the next slide, this is how they make their bread. It's a thing in the ground, clay pot, and then it gets very hot with the coal in the bottom. And then they slap the bread on the side of it, and in about 20 seconds it's cooked.
Wow, so it's a flatbread.
And it's in the ground, so there's another hole in the ground that it's always the woman is making the bread. Yeah.
Now, I noticed that the buildings, are they all built of stone?
Yes. Yes. And most of the people I met inherited their building from parents. You know. And you'll see when you can see what their kind of condition they're in. Now on that slide, if you go
Want to go
back,
back?
the young boy that's in the front, that was one of the benefits of HEIFER. That family couldn't afford to have a son, and he was so happy that they now could afford to have a son, and he had a son. It brought tears to my eyes to see that.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. And this is the lavash, the bread. It's how big it is.
Oh.
It's huge. And the people are very proud of what they make. So, next one, we've got vermiculture, worms. So we use worms to compost the manure from the cow and turn that into fertilizer, and then put it in a garden, and the garden gets very productive and is organic. That's the next one. And then whatever produce they make from the garden is stored and jarred. And you can see that all this is organic system, and it's closed system, the cow, and they grow the food. Yeah, it works.
So they really don't have to purchase
Don't have to purchase from-
external fertilizer or pesticides
That's
or
correct.
anything like that?
Which saves a lot of money, and it's better.
Yeah, you get better food that way too.
Thinking green, right? Okay.
Yeah, we are.
Next one.
Although sometimes, I'll tell you, thinking green is almost kind of going back to how things were normal 100 years ago.
Exactly, yeah. So on the next slide, you'll see these are children in the elementary school, and you see one of them is raising that calf. The one with the yellow outfit. Okay, and the next one you'll see in the school, there's a guy there that looks a little bit like Jacoby Ellsbury, it's on the right. These are actually heroes. Armenia is has been in a lot of wars, and the Turkish invasion of Armenia, which was genocide. So these people from the school that actually were heroes in the battles. Next one, we have the children have this after-school program, as I mentioned, and a lot of their work is on the wall there, little posters that they've made in the various areas of expertise. One of the kids there won a national prize in German, another one won a quiz show. They're pretty smart kids. The next one, some of them are very talented. This is Armenian, they play those, that's made from a special wood, apricot tree.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Next one, we got, this is the War Memorial, the Genocide Memorial. We brought roses there. It was a heartbreaking experience to go there. It's just like going to the Genocide Museum in Washington, to see all these Armenian pictures of the Armenians and what they've done to them. It was just very, very hard to take, very somber. Okay, next one. This is the bed. It's in Russian, Armenian, Russian, and English. So I got to sleep in someone's home in the bed. So we go there, and I slept in the bed. It wasn't a bed, it was a pull-up. But go ahead. Next one, you can see this is the condition of their outhouses, made pretty much from scraps, and it's just a hole in the ground with, that you squat over. The next one, you can see pretty, not so nice neighborhood in terms of the environment. Next one you'll see.
Now, are there any dense cities there, or were you mostly in more rural areas?
Yeah, several big cities, and they look pretty cosmopolitan. But once you get outside there, it's Fiddler on the Roof all over again. With donkey carts and stuff. So this is a beehive that people get, and if you'll see on the next one, this woman has been able to split her beehives and continue to make honey. And they sell the honey, they sell the wax, and it adds to their income. The place I stayed at, they had 18 beehives that they had got to.
Wow, so they started out with one?
With two.
Or
two or three, I think.
And then it kept expanding.
Yeah. And next one, and if they also give pigs, and if you have pigs, a pig will give 10 babies, and in 6 months, I guess you can sell them all and make a lot of money. So that's good. In Armenia, they eat a lot of meat. It's like barbecue. They barbecue all kinds of animals. But they also eat fresh vegetables with it. It's a pastoral area because it's just a lot of grass. So
it's practical to have grazing animals.
That's what they do. And one of HEIFER's big projects is restoring the pasture land that was destroyed during the USSR's dominion over Armenia. Yeah. So next one, you can see, this is what a typical house looks like. It's very airy.
It's actually kind of attractive in a rundown way.
Yeah, like when it's 20 degrees below zero and there's no heat, and one light bulb, you can get an idea what it's like. You can imagine. When I slept there, I turned every 30 minutes because that side of my face was freezing.
And that was October, not January.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, is it high elevation? Is that why it's so cold?
Yeah, it's in the mountains, right. The poor people live in the mountains, like everywhere. And the rich people own the bottom land and have plantations and farms. And next one you'll see, this is the family. They're being supported by HEIFER, and the house had been, there's a Fisher group, which is sort of like Habitat for Humanity, that's been helping renovate the homes. And it's a combination. The cows that we give, then the money they make helps pay some of the home renovations and stuff. So it's a kind of synergy. In the next slide you'll see they also raise sheep. We give sheep because there's a lot of grass, and you can sell the wool. And then the next one, and you can also get milk from them. Now you can see these are poor people. They just got a cow, so they have no money yet. Look at her hair, the lady on the left, okay? Yeah. And the lady on the right, you know, they're very, very poor. They're very, very poor. If you go to the next one, when the place with the sheep, they actually made bread, and they put all the heifer cornerstones on the bread.
Wow.
These cornerstones are things that every project has to meet in order to be supported. And that includes passing on the gift to another family, which is a great thing about heifer. Improving the environment, you know, full participation by the group, and many others.
Now, in the Armenian programs, were the men and women kind of equal participants?
Yes.
Or?
Yes. And in places where men dominate, heifer works with the women's group to bring things to gender equity. They don't want the women to dominate, they just want people to be on the same page. Next one you'll see. So there's almost a feast there. These guys had done so well. They had renovated a home, and they made all their bread. They had honey from the beehive. They had wine from the grapes. They had apples. They had potatoes. They had all kinds of stuff. It was a nice, nice thing, and they were so proud of the fact that they had achieved this thanks to heifer's help.
And most of it, you said, like the apples they might have already had, but so much of the other stuff began with the heifer gift.
Yeah, it's just amazing. Next one you got, they formed a cooperative for the pigs so that they could get better prices and less work, because then one person will be watching them instead of individual people watching individual pigs. And so they can do more stuff and they get more, to make more money.
Now, was it common for groups that get heifer gifts like that to form cooperatives or ways to help?
More and more.
Well, you had mentioned marketing
Yes.
could be an issue.
So when you form a cooperative, you get a much better price for your stuff, and then you bring it all together. You don't need one storehouse and one truck to bring to the market, and they make a lot more money that way. So they've been pushing that. Next one you'll see. This is you see that on the right, lower right. That's a container, right? There was a big earthquake in Spitak in Armenia in 1988. And the Russians were over in charge of them. So they shipped all the shipping containers for people to live in because all the homes were destroyed. And they're still there. I mean, I saw one was a Coca-Cola stand. This is part of someone's house. Yeah, they're still using them because they have no, whatever they can get their hands on, any kind of scrap. If you look, this place is made of scraps of different things that they got their hands on. Next one you'll see, this lady, you can see how poor she is. Sweater's all torn. And then the next slide you'll see she's raising her daughter and the grandchildren, and up to the left where you can't see is her sister, and she's taking care of all of these people, and she received a cow, and because of that, the little boy on the bottom, she told us the little boy had never had milk, and now he has milk.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's interesting. And the next one you got at the school, they put on a little show for us. To welcome us, and then did Armenian folk dancing. And next slide you'll see some of their projects. You can't read it because it's in Armenian, so it's okay. The next one you'll see, can you get another one?
5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Next one.
I guess our last slide. I have a little story about this. Lady here is actually a heifer employee. I'm a volunteer, but she's an employee. And she's responsible for major gifts on the West Coast. So on the flying back in the airplane, there was a whole contingent of people, priests, Armenian Apostolic Church priests, who were coming back from having celebrated the birthday of the chief priest, who's kind of equivalent to our Pope. Okay? And she was telling this man about what we do there. He started crying.
Wow.
And, he was just so impressed that we were doing this for these people, and we're not Armenians, yeah? And from there, he gave me a reference to the St. George Armenian Church up in Hartford, and from there, we raised some money for Armenia with them, and they're now trying to donate cows instead of just bringing money over.
Oh, that's great. Now, we have about 3 minutes left, so maybe each of you can talk for a minute or so how people who feel they would like to support some of the things you're involved with could go about doing so.
Yeah, well, thank you for having us again.
Well, thanks for being on.
Yeah, maybe I'll be back in another 4 years. I'll be a senior in college. But the main message is that when you feel like giving this season, think of alternative gifting. Think of spending time in a soup kitchen, or whether it's an animal from HEIFER. Because I honestly enjoy those gifts just as much as any toy that I'll play and throw away. I enjoy seeing a little postcard that says, "I have a cow," somewhere in the world.
It kind of lasts longer than a lot of the other gifts, too.
Certainly, you put it on the wall.
I can never figure out what happened to my flashlight and checker game that I would get every Christmas,
Yeah, exactly.
disappeared.
Yeah, it was interesting. It's the force multiplier model that HEIFER uses. They have to pass it on to another family. So in a way, that one cow, it keeps giving.
Right, it's kind of an exponential thing.
Yeah. And to HEIFER, you just go to heifer.org on the website, and you can see everything there. And just a quick personal story. When Beatrice Spira, who went to Connecticut College, after getting a goat over in Uganda, a lot of people know about that, was asked how many children got to go to school because of your goat, because of the passing on, the multiplier effect. She told us hundreds of children got to go to school because of her, at that time, $45 goat.
Right.
Well, wow, that is just, how do you match that? I mean, it's just really hard to do that. If I gave a care package, and I do give money to care, it's gone after a while. But the animal keeps reproducing, and it keeps reproducing, and biology is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, so you can give gifts that sustain themselves
Right.
for generations to come.
That's right.
Well, thank you, Ross, and thank you, Bill, for coming on again.
Our
And
Thank you.
I know it's near the holidays, and maybe people's shopping is mostly done, but it's also a good time to think about other things to do that make your giving more meaningful to you and to the recipient. Next week, I think will be something totally different. We're expecting to have some guests from the new Red Tail Learning Center. And we'll see you next week. And thank you again, Bill and Ross. And we'll be going out with the community calendar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I've been wandering around most of the day, and I spend hours just walking by your place. If I run into you, I'll know what to say. I'll tell you, don't worry, you're my problem now. So you're stumbling out into the world alone, and you're not sure you can make it on your own. If you need someone to tell your troubles to, I'll tell you, don't worry, my problem now. You're my problem now. You're my problem now. You're my problem now. All those people from your past, they won't ever find you. They don't need to see your face. Any troubles that you've had, leave them miles behind you. We'll be in some better place. things I wanna say and wanna do. I've got places that I wanna travel to.